All right, guys, so here's the deal. I've had a number of different questions over the last couple of sessions that we've had, and I'm going to keep rolling with this addressing questions segment because I think there's a lot of value here, not only for you guys, but also being able to take concepts and apply them immediately to your client. And there's no doubt you're going to have questions that will arise from your clients, and one of the big ones that you're going to get right away when you talk about lat pull down is which one's better. Right? Is a narrow grip lat pull down better than a wide grip lat pull down? Which one is better for my client? And at the end of the day, it comes down to which one your client can do. You're going to have some clients that have difficulty being in this abducted position. You have other individuals who, quite frankly, are going to be more comfortable here. So when you look at what you're trying to get after with your clients, the first part of this equation is, can they do it without discomfort? And that'll dictate if it becomes a frontal plane exercise versus a sagittal plane exercise. Now, the question you will definitely have is, which one is better or more effective? And at the end of the day, when you look at it, you have two different studies here from roughly 5 years apart, 2010 versus 2015. The difference is negligible when it comes to the lats. Now, in one of the studies, they make the argument through EMG studies that one arm position actually incorporates a little bit more of the ancillary muscles that are behind the scenes. But again, when you're talking about working the lats, for both of these exercises, we're still articulating the shoulder, we're still articulating the elbow. You know some bicep has to work, you know the lats have to work, and really muscles in the forearm also have to work to hold the bar. Now beyond that, you have other muscles that all have to work to be able to make the magic happen. But when you evaluate these side by side, the difference between them in terms of recruitment per EMG studies is negligible. Let's take a look. Lat, yeah. Lat pull down, frontal plane movement pattern. Matter of fact, this is very well defined by the cable there. You can see where the plane is because you have two lines there helping you make a plane. Now here would be more of a sagittal position. And I can't stress this enough. It's still a combination of elbow and shoulder joint movement, but the difference you're going to have that happens in this exercise first is if a person can do it or cannot do it. If they're able to get into this movement pattern or if they cannot get into this movement pattern. Then it becomes a negligible difference that's seen between each of those. And I tend to, when I explain this to clients, I try not to bury them in this type of information to the right. It becomes, look, hey, we're looking to move the elbows, we're looking to move the shoulders, and as a result, we know the biceps are working, we know the lats are working. And at the end of the day, the difference between the two is really negligible. I do this more for variety's sake, for your benefit, to keep your body guessing. And that's really what it's going to come down to with your clients. So if we go ahead and now go to the next question that I had, it comes down to location, 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 and understanding your resistance and where resistance is being offered. So here we have a person from a top view, shoulder, shoulder, chest. I didn't draw a head here, so I don't want to confuse it. Arm, pretty long arms, but long arms. And if we add resistance in a movement pattern that is arc-based, so we know this person is going to move from right to left across an arc, we can offer resistance in one plane, another plane, or a third plane of movement. And when you evaluate those movement patterns, you can evaluate those and look at how resistance is going to affect the movement pattern as the person rotates. So when the person rotates to the right versus the left, you start to evaluate graphically where the resistance hits the person the most and where it starts to back off. Now, this becomes a slightly different conversation if we're using bands versus cables, etc. And then when you look at positioning the person, how high you position the resistance. But let's presume that this is identical across both of these here in a second when I show these side by side. What you're really looking at is the resistance is the same amount, the same weight amount, or the same amount of resistance. It's being different, offered in a different vector. Same plane, like it's being slid across the tabletop, but the difference is you're either offering the resistance from the head of a table, the side of the table, or the other head of the table. You know, you're offering resistance in different vectors on the same plane. And on rotational exercise, that matters. But if we look at this hot mess over here, you have the same person. They're doing a movement pattern in an arc, right? And there's their line of resistance on a cable crossover. We know this pulley is not moving, it's fixed. So when that person now wants to make a change, they have to now change their body position. They can go with an open stance position versus a closed stance position. The resistance line or line of resistance will still be the same. They're just changing their position relative to that line of resistance. And now if we look at this, get R1, 2, 3, and we look at this individual over here, they are now changing their position to an open stance. So where I go with this and how I describe this is, when an individual is doing an exercise on cable crossover, I have the shoulders and the hands, and the nose and the hands draw a line. Right now, that person is at 90 degrees to the line of resistance. If we turn them to the right and close their stance versus open it, when we close it, now when their nose and hands are at 90 degrees, it becomes an acute angle, smaller than 90 degrees. Over here, when the person is at 90 degrees in front of their hands, it becomes, this becomes an obtuse angle, this becomes an acute angle. I got those backwards, I'm sorry. So you end up having this position changes from 90 to acute angle, smaller than 90, and then obtuse angle, larger than 90. Now this becomes a little bit of a mess because you have, three different overlays here. So if you look at this kind of side by side, and we break these apart, you have the person who is lined up, the resistance is to the right, and when their nose and hands are at 90 degrees, this is 90 degrees. When they rotate to the left, the further they go to the left, the resistance kind of rolls off. When they rotate to the right, the resistance kind of rolls off. If we now bring in the person to the bottom over here, we have when their nose and hands are 90 degrees, you have an obtuse angle. See that? It's bigger than 90 degrees. And so when they rotate to the left, you end up having 90 degrees perpendicular to the cable is going to feel a lot different than 90 degrees perpendicular to the cable over here. And now if we go ahead and take this a step further and we look at this, when they're 90 degrees nose to hands, this is an acute angle. It's smaller than 90, right? The line of resistance and the line of nose to hands. And when the person gets to the point where their nose to hands are 90 degrees on a cable, that's again going to offer them a different resistance curve. So when you do exercises where you're rotating about an axis with a fixed point of rotation, how you position the body relative to that rotation matters. And I urge you, take a moment and try this yourself and try it with your clients, right? Try the open, closed, and neutral stance relative to a cable tie-off point or even to a dual action pulley and get an understanding of how the resistance curves differ from body position to body position when you do an exercise. All right, guys, I'm going to break from that. Have a good one.